Hey everyone! Today is day 2 of me sharing my origin stories. So yesterday I shared why I joined a network marketing company, and today I'm going to talk about why my husband joined the military. And this goes back 30 years, and it came out of nowhere, or so I thought. So when I met my husband 30 plus years ago, he did not mention anything about the military. And I have to say, I have to back up one more step. Who out there has, I know there's a lot of you out there who have made a list of like the do's and the don'ts that you want in a relationship, right? Like I do want this, I don't want this. And you may have a big list over here, little list, big list, whatever. But my list, and I won't go into what my whole list was, but on the don't side was I do not want to marry a military person. I don't know why. I really didn't know any military people when I was growing up. I don't know why that was in my brain, but for some reason it was on my list of what I do not want to marry. I do not want to marry a military person. So when I met my husband, he wasn't. He wasn't in the military, never talked about the military, not a tiny little peep about the military came out of his mouth. So didn't even think about it. We get married, we have twins. A year later, we have another baby girl. 13 months later, we have another baby girl. And some of our very good friends, the husband, who was a good friend of my husband's, joined the Army. So he went to Army basic training one summer and he came back. We had them over for dinner and he was telling us all about his experience in Army basic training. And I watched my husband during this conversation and his eyes were lighting up like I had never seen before. He was super into this and there was just like this spark in his whole expression. So after dinner, after talking, they left and I was like, does that interest you? Like, would you ever think about joining the military? Like, have you ever thought of it? And he said, I've wanted to join the military my entire life, like ever since I was a little boy. I was like, what? How have I never heard of this? Like, how did I marry somebody who has wanted to be in the military his entire life and not a peep came out of his mouth about it? So he told me the story that when he was fresh out of high school, I guess, he tried to get into the Army. And he's very, very honest. So, you know, when you fill out those questionnaires, well, you probably don't know, but when you want to join the military, you got to fill out these questionnaires, all your health history and all the things. And one of the questions was, have you ever wheezed? And he said, yeah, I've wheezed. And so they, you have asthma, so you can't get in. Okay, so that was the first time he tried to get in. The second time he tried to get in, he told me they had him all crawl across the floor on their knees and realized that he had that one like bone thing that comes out of your knee right here. It's called Osgood-Schlatter. A lot of young boys start to develop that when they're like hitting puberty. And there's things you can do about it, by the way. Our son started to develop it, but there's things you can do to prevent it. My husband did not know that back then, and so he has, you know, that Osgood-Schlatter on his knee. And they noticed that right away, and they're like, no, you can't join because you got that. So then he was working at a Christian camp. I don't know the time frame for all of this because I hadn't met him yet. I didn't know him during this time. And he was in a severe horse accident. So he was riding bareback, got thrown off the horse, and was in a coma for 2 or 3 days. And so after that, after he had recovered, he tried to get into the military again. And I think this time he might have tried to get into the Marine Corps. So the first 2 times, Army. I think the third time might have been the Marine Corps. And they found out he had had a horse accident and he was knocked unconscious and in a coma. And after a head injury like that, you can't you can't join the military. You have to wait 5 years after a traumatic head injury like that. So he had pretty much written it off because we had met, we got married, we started having kids, and he just figured that that wasn't going to be ever possible for him. Until the day that his friend came over and started talking about Army basic training, and his eyes lit up, and I was like, what is going on? Does this interest you? And that's when he shared that it had interested him his entire life. He's always wanted to be in the military. And he just didn't talk about it because he had written it off. Well, now it had been 5 years, like almost to the day. It had been 5 years after that head injury. And so me, being the good wife, was like in the back of my mind thinking, he's been rejected 3 times. There's probably very little chance that he would get in. So I'm like, I'll be the good wife and be like, oh, you should go, fulfill your dreams, like do what you've always wanted to do. And also there was part of me, so that was like the, sort of selfish part. The other part was, I don't want to be the person that stood in the way of his dreams. Like, I don't want him to look back years later and think, I wish I would have, could have, should have, but I got married and had kids. So I was like, you know what? Why don't you go try again? And he was ecstatic. Like, he was so happy. It was just completely like a whole mindset change. And so he did. He went. And he went through the whole process and could not believe it, but he got in. And I'm like, what are the chances? What are the chances that 3 times you haven't been able to get in, and now we're married, we have 3 kids, so I have 1-year-old twins and a newborn baby, and he gets in. And so they actually sent out a recruiter, or like an officer recruiter, I don't know. Somebody came to the house to talk to me because this was such a major decision. He was 25 years old at the time, and 25 is old for joining the Marine Corps. And he was married and he had 3 kids. So this is not normal. Most guys join the military, the Marine Corps, right out of high school, young 17-year-olds. So they came, they wanted to talk to me and just like let me know how serious of a decision this is. And so I had to sit there and be okay with it. So that is how it all started. I could not believe it. I did not think I didn't marry a military man, and yet I was married to one. And so the rest is history, and I won't share that in this live. I will share it someday, but after that, we went through 2 deployments and a traumatic brain injury from one of them and long-term PTSD. So that decision completely changed the trajectory of our lives. It changed for good also, though, and I will share that someday. But that's the origin of how my husband joined the military. So tomorrow, stay tuned, because tomorrow I'm going to talk about why we decided to homeschool. So follow along. Talk to you tomorrow.